This revenge story contains intense acts of retribution that may be excessive and could be disturbing to some viewers.
I never thought my life would come to this. Liam, mid-30s, ordinary. House in the suburbs, the kind with a lawn that needed mowing every Saturday. A job in accounting, predictable as sunrise. And Maya, my wife. Or she had been. The coffee tasted bitter that morning. Maya usually made it a ritual I looked forward to. Today, it was my brew, hasty, distracted. She was already gone when I came downstairs, a note stuck to the fridge with a magnet shaped like a cartoon avocado. Late meeting, see you tonight. Just that. No heart, no smiley face. Subtle shifts, that's what they were. Like the way she'd started putting on makeup even on days she worked from home. Or the new perfume. Something floral, expensive. I'd asked about it once. A sample, she'd said too quickly. The company gave it out. Jonas. The name had been dropped a few times. Jonas from marketing has the same hobby as me. I am enjoying the social club we are in. Just a coworker. That's what I kept telling myself. I went to work. Numbers blurred on the screen. The rhythmic tapping of keyboards was a dull roar. I tried to focus, but my mind kept drifting back to Maya, to the perfume, to the name Jonas. Paranoia, maybe. I didn't want to believe it. Didn't want to confront the possibility that the life I knew was a lie. That evening, she was late. Again. Traffic, she texted. A stock response. Dinner was cold pizza. I waited. The television flickered with mindless chatter. Around 11 p.m., a ping on my laptop. An email from an unknown address. The subject line, truth. My pulse quickened. I hesitated. A cold dread filled me. I clicked. Attached were two photos. The first, Maya and Jonas, laughing, holding hands in a park. The second, Maya kissing Jonas outside a restaurant, the neon glow of the sign reflecting in their eyes. The restaurant name, La Serena. A place we'd celebrated our anniversary years ago. The air in the room seemed to thin. My breath hitched. It wasn't paranoia. It was real. Another email. From Frank. He was listed as a private investigator. There was an invoice and a note, more to come. The rage was a slow burn at first, then a wildfire. Years of trust gone. The house felt smaller, colder. The pizza tasted like ash. I picked up my phone, dialed Maya's number. It went straight to voicemail. Where the hell are you? I managed to say. My voice cracked. I hung up. The photos stared back at me. The smiling faces. The stolen kisses. It was war. Frank. The name echoed in my head, a lifeline thrown into the churning sea of betrayal. Private investigator. The online presence was understated. A salt and pepper photo, a list of vague services, and testimonials that spoke of discretion and results. That's what I needed. Discretion and damn good results. I called him. His voice was a low rumble like distant thunder. We arranged a meeting at a greasy spoon just off the highway. Red vinyl booths, chipped formica tables, the smell of frying bacon hanging heavy in the air. The kind of place where secrets could be exchanged without attracting attention. My wife, I began, the words catching in my throat. She's having an affair, and there's money involved. Frank listened, his face a mask. Years of dealing with messy divorces and corporate espionage had etched all emotion from his features. He just nodded, his pen scratching against a notepad. Proof. That's what you're paying for. Proof. I needed more than just suspicions. More than the gnawing feeling in my gut that something was terribly wrong. I needed evidence, concrete and irrefutable. Something that would expose the truth and give me leverage. I hired him on the spot. A large chunk of my savings disappeared with the signature on the contract, but I didn't hesitate. It was an investment in my future, in reclaiming what was rightfully mine. The next few weeks were an exercise in agonizing patience. Each day felt like an eternity, filled with mounting anxiety and a desperate need to know. Frank was a ghost, silent and efficient. Then, the trickle of information began. Photos arrived first, attached to encrypted emails. Images of Maya and Jonas, their faces flushed with laughter, their hands intertwined. Seemingly innocent moments, yet each one felt like a knife twisting in my gut. They were at a coffee shop near her office, a park we used to frequent, a dimly lit bar I'd never seen before. Then came the receipts, itemizing expensive dinners, luxury hotels, and weekend getaways. La Serena, the upscale Italian restaurant where we'd celebrated our anniversary. They'd splurged on a meal that cost more than my weekly paycheck. They were living a life I couldn't afford, funded by my hard-earned money. But the real bombshell came with the bank statements. Joint accounts, opened in secret. Loans and lines of credit, draining our savings and racking up debt in my name. They were planning to disappear, leaving me with nothing but bills and a broken heart. I called Frank, my voice trembling with rage. "They're stealing from me." "Looks that way," he confirmed, his tone devoid of emotion. "They're planning to disappear." He also provided me with recordings captured with hidden microphones, fragments of conversations carefully pieced together to reveal the full extent of their betrayal. Maya's voice, usually so gentle, now laced with cunning and deceit. Jonas, oozing charm as he spoke about how easily he'd fooled me. "He's so predictable," Maya had said. "He'll never suspect a thing." The words stung, a brutal confirmation of my own naivete. The evidence was overwhelming, a mountain of lies and deceit. The initial shock had given way to a cold, burning rage, a fierce determination to make them pay. I meticulously organized the evidence, photos, receipts, statements, transcripts, creating a detailed dossier of their betrayal. This wasn't just about divorce anymore. This was about justice. This was about revenge. As I sat there in the darkness, surrounded by the evidence of their treachery, a name surfaced in my mind. Bethany. I didn't know her well, but I knew her reputation. She was a fixer, someone who could make problems disappear. I picked up the phone, my heart pounding in my chest. It was time to play dirty. Bethany. The name hung in the air like cigarette smoke, a scent of danger and intrigue. I knew her only by reputation, a local fixer, someone who handled problems others couldn't or wouldn't. Rumors swirled around her, whispers of favors, debts, and a network that stretched into the city's underbelly. Finding her wasn't hard. A discreet phone call, a coded message left with a bartender at a dive bar on the edge of town. The next day, I received a text. Warehouse District, Pier 17, 8 p.m. The warehouse was deserted, the air thick with the smell of salt and decay. The only light came from a single bare bulb hanging precariously from the ceiling. I waited, my heart pounding against my ribs. Bethany arrived in a black SUV, 2 men flanking her. They were built like brick walls, their faces expressionless. Bethany herself was surprisingly small, but her presence filled the space. Sharp eyes, a knowing smile, and an aura of absolute control. "Liam," she said, her voice low and smooth. "I hear you have a problem." I laid out the facts, the details of Maya's betrayal, the financial deceit. Bethany listened, her gaze unwavering. When I finished, she leaned back, a slow smile spreading across her face. "You've got guts, Liam," she said. "I like that. Most guys would just cry in their beer." She lit a cigarette, the flame illuminating her face. "So what do you want me to do?" I hesitated. I hadn't fully formed the words in my mind, hadn't allowed myself to confront the darkness I was contemplating. But the anger, the need for revenge, was overwhelming. "I want them to pay," I said, my voice barely a whisper. Bethany nodded, exhaling a plume of smoke. "Pay how?" I looked at her, my eyes pleading. I don't care. Just make them pay. Bethany studied me for a moment, her eyes piercing. Revenge is a messy business, Liam. You sure you're ready for this? I thought of Maya's lies, of Jonas's smug face. I thought of my stolen money, my broken heart. Yes, I said, my voice firm. I'm sure. Bethany smiled, a predatory gleam in her eyes. All right, Liam, we can help you, but it's going to cost you, and you have to play by my rules. What kind of rules? I asked, a knot forming in my stomach. No questions, she said, her voice hard. No hesitation. You do what I say when I say it. Understand? I looked at her enforcers, at the dark warehouse. I knew I was stepping into a world I didn't understand, a world with no rules, no boundaries. But I was desperate. I understand, I said. Bethany nodded, her smile widening. Good. Then let's get to work. She flicked her cigarette butt onto the concrete floor and crushed it with her heel. You just made a deal with the devil, Liam. The plan Bethany laid out was simple, brutal in its simplicity. I had to lure Maya and Jonas to a specific location, a meeting under false pretenses, a chance to talk things out. My stomach churned at the thought of facing them, of pretending everything was normal. But Bethany's gaze brooked no argument. You play your part, Liam, she'd said, her voice like steel. This only works if they trust you. Trust. A hollow word now. I called Maya. My voice trembled slightly, but I managed to keep it steady. Maya, we need to talk. Really talk. Face to face. She hesitated. I don't know, Liam. Please, I said, injecting a note of desperation into my voice. For old time's sake. Just one last time. After a long pause, she agreed. A flicker of guilt, perhaps. Or maybe just morbid curiosity. Okay, she said finally. Tomorrow night, 8 p.m. That old warehouse down by the docks? The location was Bethany's choice, of course. Abandoned, isolated, and far from prying eyes. Perfect for what was to come. I hung up, my hand shaking. The first part was done. Now came the hard part, waiting. The next day crawled by. I went through the motions at work, but my mind was elsewhere, replaying the conversation with Maya, imagining the confrontation to come. As 8 p.m. approached, I drove to the warehouse, my heart pounding in my chest. The building loomed in the darkness, a skeletal silhouette against the night sky. A single flickering light bulb illuminated the entrance, casting long, distorted shadows. I parked a block away, took a deep breath, and walked toward the warehouse. As I approached, I could see Bethany's men lurking in the shadows, their faces grim and unreadable. They were like silent guardians, ensuring the plan went off without a hitch. Maya and Jonas arrived a few minutes later, pulling up in Jonas's shiny sports car. They looked nervous, hesitant. Maya avoided my gaze. Jonas, ever the confident one, offered a weak smile. Liam, Maya said, her voice strained. What's going on? I took a step forward, my hand reaching into my jacket. I pulled out the envelope containing the photos, the receipts, the bank statements, the evidence of their betrayal, laid bare for all to see. You know damn well what's going on, I said, my voice low and dangerous. You thought you could get away with this? You thought I wouldn't find out? Maya's face paled. Jonas's smile vanished. He tried to bluff, to deny, but the evidence was overwhelming. What is this, Liam? Jonas stammered. Some kind of joke? It's no joke, Jonas, I said, my eyes burning with anger. You've been sleeping with my wife, stealing my money, and planning to run away and leave me with nothing. I tossed the envelope at their feet. The photos scattered across the ground, a testament to their deceit. Maya began to cry. Jonas's bravado crumbled. They were trapped, exposed. That's when Bethany stepped out of the shadows, her presence radiating power and menace. Her men moved with her, surrounding Maya and Jonas, cutting off any chance of escape. Well, 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 Bethany said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Looks like someone's been a bad boy and girl. She turned to me, her eyes hard. You made a deal, Liam. Time to deliver. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. This was it, the moment of reckoning. I looked at Maya, at Jonas, at the fear in their eyes. A part of me felt a pang of guilt, a flicker of remorse. But it was quickly extinguished by the burning rage that consumed me. You had a choice, I said, my voice cold and devoid of emotion. You chose to betray me. Now you have to face the consequences. I gestured to Bethany. They're all yours. The days crawled past, each one heavier than the last. Sleep offered no escape, only a relentless loop of Maya's tear-stained face and Jonas's vacant stare. The initial flicker of satisfaction had long since been extinguished, replaced by a gnawing unease that threatened to consume me. Was this what revenge tasted like? Ash in my mouth? Bethany's call was abrupt, devoid of any human warmth. Tonight. The party. Final offer. It wasn't a question, but a command. Despite the revulsion that churned in my gut, a morbid curiosity, a twisted sense of responsibility, compelled me to accept. The directions led me far outside the city, to a sprawling estate hidden deep within a dense forest. The air grew noticeably colder as I approached, thick with the scent of pine and damp earth. The mansion itself was a Gothic monstrosity, its dark stone facade illuminated by strategically placed gas lamps that cast long, eerie shadows. Gargoyles leered from the rooftops, their stone eyes seeming to follow my every move. Bethany's men, their faces as impassive as ever, met me at the wrought iron gates. They wordlessly escorted me through a maze of opulent yet unsettling hallways. Each room was more extravagant than the last, filled with priceless antiques, grotesque artwork, and heavy velvet drapes that seemed to suffocate the air. The scent of expensive perfume mingled with the musty odor of decay, creating a sickeningly sweet aroma. Finally, they led me to a hidden observation room. It was a small, claustrophobic space, barely large enough to stand in, overlooking the grand ballroom. A one-way mirror offered a distorted, almost dreamlike view of the spectacle unfolding within. The ballroom was a sensory overload. The air throbbed with music, a low, pulsating rhythm that resonated deep in my chest. Crystal chandeliers, each worth more than my house, cast a blinding glare on the assembled guests. They were a grotesque parody of high society. Men in impeccably tailored suits, their faces hidden behind elaborate, often disturbing masks. Women in shimmering gowns that clung to their bodies like liquid gold, their necks and wrists adorned with diamonds that glittered like shards of ice. The room buzzed with hushed conversations, the clinking of champagne glasses and the rustle of silk. The scene was a tableau of wealth, power, and unspoken depravity. And then I saw them, Maya and Jonas. They were almost unrecognizable. The spark had gone out of their eyes, replaced by a dull, vacant stare. Their clothes were simple, almost rags, a stark contrast to the opulent attire of the other guests. They stood huddled together in the center of the room, their bodies trembling, their faces etched with a mixture of fear, shame, and utter despair. They looked like lambs being led to the slaughter. A figure in flowing white robes, his face completely concealed by an ornate bird-like mask, ascended a small, elevated stage. His voice, amplified by hidden speakers, echoed through the ballroom, sending a shiver down my spine. "Welcome, honored guests," he intoned, his tone dripping with false sincerity. "Tonight, we celebrate the delicate balance between pleasure and pain, the exquisite dance between power and submission." A wave of polite, yet unsettling applause rippled through the crowd. "Tonight, we present to you a unique opportunity to witness the consequences of transgression. the price of betrayal. He gestured dramatically towards Maya and Jonas. These unfortunate souls have dared to defy the bonds of loyalty and trust. Now they will learn the true meaning of atonement. A hush fell over the room as the entertainment commenced. Maya and Jonas were forced to endure a series of increasingly humiliating tasks, each designed to strip them bare, both physically and emotionally. They were paraded before the guests, mocked and ridiculed, their every flaw and failing exposed for public consumption. Jonas, fueled by a desperate surge of adrenaline, attempted to resist. He shouted obscenities, he pleaded for mercy, he tried to shield Maya from the worst of the abuse, but his efforts were futile. Bethany's men, their faces as blank and unreadable as stone, swiftly and brutally subdued him. He was dragged away, kicking and screaming, his defiance quickly extinguished. Maya, on the other hand, seemed to have completely surrendered. She moved like a puppet, her body stiff and unresponsive, her eyes fixed on some distant, unreachable point. She obeyed every command, no matter how demeaning, her face a mask of numb resignation. It was as if she had already died, and only her empty shell remained. I saw how a guest forced her to dance with him despite knowing she was in pain. The guests reveled in their torment, their faces alight with a disturbing mix of amusement, curiosity, and outright sadism. They were like vultures circling a dying carcass, eager to feast on its remains. I saw one woman offer Jonas money in exchange for a kiss, then recoil in disgust when he approached her. I watched as another man forced Maya to crawl on her hands and knees, barking like a dog, while he snapped a whip above her head. I wanted to look away, to shut out the horror, but I was powerless to do so. I was trapped in that small, dark room, forced to witness the depravity that I had unleashed. My stomach churned, my head swam, and a cold sweat broke out across my brow. Was this justice? Was this revenge? Or had I simply become a monster myself? As the night wore on, the atmosphere grew increasingly feverish, increasingly unhinged. The tasks became more extreme, the humiliations more perverse. The line between entertainment and torture blurred, then vanished completely. Maya and Jonas were stripped bare, both literally and figuratively. They were reduced to nothing more than objects, playthings for the amusement of the wealthy and powerful. Their humanity was gone, replaced by a hollow emptiness. Finally, as the first pale light of dawn crept through the windows, signaling the end of the night's festivities, the party began to dissolve. The guests, their appetites sated, their desires fulfilled, drifted away, leaving behind a scene of utter desolation. Bethany's men emerged from the shadows, their faces as impassive as ever. They gathered Maya and Jonas, herding them like cattle, and led them away into the darkness. I stumbled out of the observation room, my body trembling, my mind reeling. I felt sick, disgusted, and utterly lost. Bethany was waiting for me in the hallway, her eyes narrowed, her expression unreadable. "It's finished," she said, her voice flat. I could only stare at her, my eyes filled with a horror that I could barely comprehend. The weight of what I had done, the darkness I had unleashed, threatened to crush me. "What happens to them now?" I managed to croak, my voice barely a whisper. Bethany shrugged, her shoulders lifting in a dismissive gesture. "They disappear. They serve their purpose. Their fate is no longer your concern." She gave me a cold, knowing smile. "You got your revenge, Liam. Was it worth it?" She turned and walked away, disappearing into the labyrinthine corridors of the mansion, leaving me alone in the darkness to confront the wreckage of my own creation. By the time the first rays of dawn painted the sky, Maya and Jonas were gone, vanished into the system Bethany controlled, their future uncertain, their fate sealed. I drove home in a daze, the images of the dark party replaying in my mind like a grotesque film reel. The house felt empty, sterile. The silence amplified the echoes of my actions. I showered, scrubbing my skin raw, trying to wash away the filth of the night. But the stain was deeper than skin. I finalized the divorce proceedings. Maya didn't contest anything. She simply signed the papers, her face blank, her eyes devoid of emotion. It was as if she had already ceased to exist. Bethany's people transferred the money Maya and Jonas had stolen back into my account. It was a substantial sum, enough to rebuild my life. But the victory felt hollow, tainted by the darkness that had consumed me. I tried to move on, to resume my old life, but it was impossible. Everything felt different, tainted. I couldn't look at my neighbors, my friends, without wondering if they could see the darkness that now resided within me. I started having nightmares, visions of the masked figures, the degrading tasks, the vacant eyes of Maya and Jonas. I would wake up in a cold sweat, my heart pounding, the taste of ash in my mouth. I avoided people, isolating myself in my home. The silence was deafening, broken only by the ticking of the clock and the whispers of my conscience. One day, Frank called. "You okay, Liam?" he asked, his voice gruff with concern. "No," I admitted. "I'm not okay." Frank was silent for a moment. "Revenge is a tricky thing," he said finally. "It can eat you up inside. Tell me about it," I said, my voice bitter. "Sometimes," Frank said, "the best thing you can do is walk away. Let it go." Easy for him to say, I thought. He hadn't been betrayed, humiliated, and robbed blind. But his words resonated with me. I knew deep down that he was right. I couldn't keep living like this, consumed by the past. I had to find a way to move on, to heal. I decided to sell the house, to leave the town, to start over somewhere new. It wouldn't erase what had happened, but it might give me a chance to rebuild my life, to find some measure of peace. As I packed my belongings, I came across a photo of Maya and me, taken years ago, before everything had fallen apart. We were smiling, happy, our eyes filled with hope. I stared at the photo for a long time, a wave of sadness washing over me. What had we done? How had we let things get so bad? With a sigh, I placed the photo in a box, a relic of a life that was no more. It was time to move on.